Well, we'll kick off with sort of the homework actually.
Hmm.
So what I'd love to hear is just what's been happening. What are some of the stories that have popped up over the summer? We looked at casual conversation, and so the whole thing was around where, where you're able to see your conversations move forward. And so I just love to hear what's been happening.
Yeah, I'll start. So I had two really positive interactions with people of peace. Uh, so one of them is a guy I played tennis with. We haven't had casual anything beyond casual conversations. I think some kind of touching on meaningful, but definitely not spiritual. But what was really cool was he invited himself to Christmas service. So he came and joined us at Christmas. Um, I didn't even invite him. He said, "Oh, you have a Christmas service?" I said, "Yeah, 10 o'clock, Bankstown." He said, "Oh, can I come?" And I said, "Sure." Um, so that was great. He really enjoyed that. Um, yeah. So his name is Steve. And then we
Never have
haven't had.
Steves.
Sorry.
You can never have enough Steves.
Sorry. And we haven't had any meaningful or spiritual conversations since, but obviously that door is open. And he said, "Oh, I'd like to come again when I can." So that's good. Um, and then another guy I've already had spiritual conversations with. Um, and yeah, we've just been able to take that further and just keep talking about spiritual, theological, philosophical stuff. But then what's really interesting was I invited him to one of the evangelistic talks I'm doing this month, and he politely declined. But um, then I just saw one of the evangelists around Sydney called Sam Chan. He was doing these series of talks, and it was all based on paradox. And because we had been chatting about paradoxes, I just said, "Hey, look, what a coincidence!" And he actually said, "Oh, I think I'll go to one of those." So I haven't followed that up yet, but anyway, I've been having good spiritual back and forth with him. I think for him, really, the next step is a sort of discovery question, like, would you like to read the Bible with me? But we haven't got to that place yet.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's another person of peace. His name is Jeremy. Yeah,
Nice. Jeremy. Awesome. Thank you. That's cool. Someone else. What's been some of those conversations you've been having? The intentional conversations you've been looking at over the summer break.
For one of my people, Terry, who is a neighbor, I feel like I've been aware that I would like to go further with her and talk deeper with her, but I feel like it's just been God who has been opening all these opportunities because we had a neighborhood Christmas party and we chatted then. And then I just have seen her a number of times just when I'm walking my dog. And she's been the one who's wanted to talk, like, and has sort of asked questions. Last time we talked about, she was asking what I believed about God and who Jesus is. And because she has a sister who's a Jehovah's Witness, I think. And so she was saying what her sister believed. And yeah, it was a really great conversation and one that she like was initiating those deeper topics. And I was all about to like think, oh, maybe I should just say to her, look, it'd be really great to read the Bible with you. And then her partner came out to say dinner was ready. And so I'm just, yeah, I haven't seen her again since then. So I'm just thinking what the next step is for her. Yeah.
Nice. Not to put you on the spot, and not to. This is not an accountability question.
Yes.
This is just an info question. what was one of the topics or one of the spiritual topics you guys have touched on?
Yeah,
What's something
well,
that she loves to jump into? What's her space?
well, she just likes to talk about God in general, and she'll come back to her personal experiences and say, because she actually had a stroke about like a couple of years ago, and it was the one day of the year that she didn't drive, and for some really random reason her daughter said, I'll drive today, and she never does that. And that was when she had the stroke, and she knows that if she'd been driving, she probably would have died. And so she actually has said this a number of times. She knows this is a evidence for her that God's real, and he sort of has done that in her life. So yeah, and she said something like, I believe Jesus is God, or the Son of God, but I don't know if he's God. And so things like that. I think just she went to an Anglican background school, so she has some background, but yeah, she talks about just how she's lived her life, and yeah, she'll go off on all sorts of questions, but she's very chatty. But I can tell she's just really seeking.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. And that's Terry.
Terry, yeah.
Terry the neighbor. Cool.
Yeah, I also know Terry.
Yeah.
I also, during the COVID time, she was really anxious. And I talked to her, and she actually quite open for people to pray for her. So I remember one time that when she was walking her dog and past my front yard, we started talking, and she was tearing, crying. So I offered to pray for her, and she was yeah, I think she's quite open. And especially when Karen mentioned, I remember she said God saved me from that stroke. So yeah, I think she has the understanding that there is a creator, but I don't think that she has a relationship. But she's grateful that she's alive and yeah, healed. Yeah.
That's cool. So you guys live around the corner from each other somewhere?
We live 3 doors down, yeah.
3 doors down. Okay. Nice. Amy, do you have any others?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
She's also a friend as well. Name is Jennifer, and she's our neighbor. And me and Karen wants to share the gospel with her for a couple of years, Karen, right? We create a lot of opportunities to spend time with her, to get to know her. And it's an answer of prayer that for the first time that she joined our Christianity Explored group today at Karen's house. And we've been inviting her for, I don't know, for many times. And I sometimes go for walks with her in the morning. And last week when we went for a walk, and she actually admitted herself, she said, every time when you invite me, actually I really wanted to come. But somehow last minute, I just want to pull out. She was quite honest. So I shared it with Karen, told her, and we prayed that she would be able to come today. And yeah, I think it's an answer of prayer that she came today for the first time. It was really relaxed today, right? It wasn't, like a bubble bashing or anything, but she's actually seeking, and she wants to know who God is, if there's a real God. She has a lot of Christians in her life, but she just felt like she said that sometimes she's discouraged from seeking God because a lot of Christians are worse than non-believers, so their behavior and everything. So she just found it's so confusing. Yeah. Her name is Jennifer. If you can keep praying for her. And I don't know why, I don't feel confident that she will keep on seeking. I can't tell why. Sometimes she's so keen and wanting to know more, and sometimes she just like pull herself away. And if Karen or I message her, she will find excuses of doesn't want to meet up, or something came up. It might be something came up, but we give her the benefit of doubt. But yeah, just very inconsistent sometimes. So
Mm,
yeah, right, Karen, do you want to say
Yeah.
something?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Anyone else? Or while you're thinking, I'll tell you mine. So I went down between Christmas and New Year. Crossway sort of shuts up shop, even though we do have services on both weekends because of the Christmas and New Year. But between that time, it's stay out of the office, please. Don't come in. So I generally head down to a place called Rosebud on the foreshore of the Mornington Peninsula and just hang out in a tent. And the site that I was at is a friend of my wife's, and the friend had her brother and sister-in-law, come along and actually share the site with me. And I know these guys, but they're like 10 years older than me, whatever. Anyway, it was I have only come across them once every year. It's not a very consistent relationship or anything like that. But it was funky how they were this time, second time round. So last year we hung out together. 12 months later, they were asking some great questions, like really pushing into that space. Though, when I actually asked my wife's friend, I said, "Would your brother, what do you think? How would they respond, to this?" And she said, "Oh, don't ask them that." I said, "Okay. So just let the relationship develop." She said, "Yes. Don't push into that. Just let it." Yeah. They grew like my wife's friend and her family all grew up in church, but one of the uncles was a sexually abusive man, and so all the children bar one have stepped away from faith. Again, it's that whole thing of sometimes Christians' behavior. I think Amy, you just said that sometimes Christians' behavior is worse than non-Christians.
Mm.
Yes. So this uncle, who was a church-going deacon, did the wrong thing by 4 children in that family, and so the 3 sons have left the church. The daughter remains a believer, but her daughter's my wife's friend, Janet's friend, she says, it's happened, but God can redeem these relationships. So it's fun to be part of that. Just you're not the main person, but you're just like, they ask a ton of questions. Like we're sitting there for 5 days and there's question after question after question after question. I'm like, I'd love to let you read the Bible and find out the answer to that question. Oh, don't ask them that yet. Don't ask them that yet. Sorry. So that was my little bit over just over the Christmas New Year break. And then another 4 days of watching the cricket. Australia versus Pakistan on the couch.
Yeah, I did plenty of that. Well, for me, I didn't really get to see my person of peace, my niece. We were planning to go and visit her in Bathurst, but my wife got sick. No, my son got sick, so she didn't end up coming. Anyway, so I didn't end up seeing her by myself. But on that same trip, I did see my sister, and I recently found out that her husband had quite developed lung cancer, which was a huge shock to her, and
Wow.
everybody. And she was quite cut up about it, and I can't remember how it went, but I think I think when I first heard about it, she rang me up actually, and I said, "Oh, be praying for you." They're not Christians, and they've always never been very open to talking about any God stuff, but she was very open to me praying for her. And then when I saw her up in my brother's farm, she actually asked me to sit down and pray with her, which was a big step because she was so cut up about things. So I did that, and she invited my other sister along, who's also not a Christian. So that was really nice, just to be able to sit down and pray with them.
Yeah.
So I felt like God opened up a very unexpected opportunity. And yeah, so who knows what will come of it, but that was good.
That's awesome. Sad about the lung cancer, though. Is it
It was a real shock. Yeah.
treatable? Is it a
Probably not. So I think he's getting chemo, but it's probably just
prolonging life?
prolonging life. I think he's got stage 4. So I don't think there's a lot of hope, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of questions and
Yeah.
answers
Yeah.
sought. Thanks, Marshall. In China, Stephen.
Yeah. This time, Mira and I, we saw some of our friends. One couple, especially, we saw we might have opportunity maybe next time to share more. So the wife was Miriam's close friend. They grew up together. They went to high school together. But the wife's not very particularly interested in the faith, but her husband. We talk about life because we are all in midlife crisis. So he shared with us anxiety. So just out of nowhere, anxiety will come, and he had this kind of like anxious about life. So he said he actually wanted to believe as we do. But maybe someone might guide him. So, but I think it's a very good starting point. In the past, because we are very close friends. Miriam and the wife, they are very close, and the two families are every time we went back, we organized to have a meal together. So this time we also had a meal twice together. So during the conversations, he actually said he wanted to believe, and his mom, if I remember correctly, his mom or his grandma or so they actually believers too. Maybe next time we go back and we can talk a little bit more, or even we might have opportunities to study the Bible together online, maybe. So yeah, but it's a good. I think this is probably the first time. In the past, Miriam always share with her friend, she should coming to believe in Jesus. But I think actually the husband this time, the first time he expressed kind of like interest. Yeah.
Nice. That's excellent, guys. Like seriously, the whole thing is just that being intentional, and I stand as condemned as anyone else in terms of sometimes I'm just oblivious to the conversations around me and things, and other times I'm like, I'm gonna have that conversation. And this trip, actually, I have a friend that I used to work with at Dulux. So 1,000 years ago, we used to manage. He used to be the IT guy, and I used to be the operations guy, and then we sort of flipped over. He's now an operations guy, and I'm in the church. But we still, 30-year relationship. And it was only last year that I worked out he was my person of peace. after 30 years of hanging out and fucking around and doing stuff together. It was just this trip I didn't get a chance to actually meet up, and bit of a shame. So I'm actually going to be texting him on Saturday just to sort of say, hey, can I call you? Because I actually want to ask him to read the Bible with me. We had, all the signs were there. They even visited us overseas when we were missionaries. They came to Thailand, the whole family, and hung out with us and watched what we did and did. Their kids went to Christian schools, and they asked the question, so what Bible do we buy them? So the signs have always been there over 30 years. I'm just sort of, thick as a plank. And I just totally missed it until last year when they started asking all these questions. And I'm like, oh, they're my people of faith. And I was about to ask them to read the Bible with me last year. And before I got a chance, they said, oh, we're going off. What are you doing with you're going on long service? What are you doing with your long service? We're going over to Western Australia via 4-wheel drive. And I went, that means you won't have much internet connection. They said, nah, we'll be off grid for, weeks at a time. I went, well, that stops me asking if they want to read the Bible, because we'd only do it by Zoom anyway. No chance of doing that when you no internet connection. So it'd be inconsistent. And I don't want that. I want a rhythm that we can say every 2 weeks, let's get on Zoom and read the Bible together. Anyway, I'm going to duck off and I didn't bring my little pen in. I'm actually going to draw a picture for you. We're going to be looking at, because this is not just for you guys. This is as you creating this culture, you're going to come up against, it's probably not the right word, but people, the excuses we make. And there's two main excuses. And we're just going to touch on that briefly for the rest of the night. So I'm just going to jump off and get my Apple Pen, and I'll be back in a second. It's in the lounge room. All right. Sorry about that. So let me just share the screen. So we're looking at this whole idea. If you're trying to create the culture that you're looking for, it's that the whole thing you're looking at is along the way, people will feel resistance. And so we're going to just have a look at that. Am I connecting up? And what are sort of some of the things you can look at, or as you're clustering other people in the church? Like, that's my encouragement, is in the longer term, in a couple of months' time, you guys are starting to invite people into the same space you're in now, and actually asking them, let's go on this discipleship journey together. All right. Hopefully you see a blank screen. Awesome. And why is my pen all right, we're still going to talk. My Apple Pencil is drained dry, which is weird because I only just charged it, so that's great. So we're always looking for what Jesus created, and what he was always looking at was authentic relationships. That's what you want all your folk to be looking at, is, are these authentic relationships, or are we trying to manufacture stuff? And Jesus seemed to be very, very good at authentic relationships. Most of us, we try really hard to be Jesus, but we're not. And we tend to have tendencies in one of two areas. Now, Jesus was both bold and humble. And I will draw this as a graph in a second, but I'll just sort of keep talking until my Apple Pen decides it's charged enough that I could use it. And so, so we're going to look at the relationships that Jesus had through this lens of humility and boldness. And for most people, we've either got to become more humble, or we've got to become bolder. Jesus had the perfect tension of the two. For most of us, it's the other way. So my very first cluster, Baptist church over in Western Australia, called in a small country town called Wagen, wheat belt of Western Australia. It's either sheep or wheat. That's all you got a choice between if you're living in Wagen. That's the two industries. And the pastor there, lovely guy, Gary, and we were talking about this, and he said, "So you're telling me I have to actually shut up more?" Like, he put his hand on his face, like, "I've got to shut up more." I was like, "No, yes." "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, because he was a very much, I got into the ministry because people are lost and I've got to tell them all about it. He wasn't a soapbox preacher, but he was certainly someone who didn't miss the opportunity to tell you that you were going to hell. Sounds wonderful. And so he was that guy that most people avoided. And look at that. A couple of seconds and the pen works. All right. So we've got humility up here and boldness on this axis. Authentic relationships is obviously where we want to get to. And so Gary was the guy that was actually starting down in this quadrant down here. I'll show you what this. He was in this quadrant here. And in this quadrant here, when you're always bold and you're always telling people stuff and you're always sort of saying you're on a journey to hell and all this sort of stuff, what comes to mind is it's a bit abrasive and a bit arrogant. At least that's the impression I get from people. And I used to have the soapbox preachers in Brisbane. You walk to uni and they're yelling at you, thumping their Bibles. And even after I became a believer in second term of my first year, they were still thumping their Bible and calling me a heathen. So they were rather abrasive little characters. And Gary, admittedly, by his own thing, is I think I'm like that. I'm this abrasive, but I've got to tell him. That's why I become a minister, to tell him about Jesus. And so his journey of faith was like that. And his whole thinking was, "You mean I've got to shut up?" Sort of. What do you mean? Well, try. So for these guys, the whole thing around this area down here is they hate risking truth. The truth is Jesus will set you free. Awesome. And so they want to tell people about that. And he's looking and going, "So you want me to develop relationships?" Yes, you've got it. And so what he looked at, I said, "Do you watch sport?" He says, "Oh yeah, I love the rugby." So rugby union was his thing over in Western Australia, of all places. He says, "But that doesn't sit well with me in terms of no one else here wants to watch the rugby." Okay. What he discovered was that most the elderly men of the town, who were always 5 or 6, 10 years older than him, on a Tuesday morning they would go to a coffee shop and hang out together. And so it was an open invitation. Anyone in the town could come and have coffee. And so Gary did. He would come every Tuesday morning and have coffee. And everything in him wanted to tell the truth. Here's the truth. Here's the gospel. And he just sat there. He didn't say anything. He'd engage in conversations, obviously, but he wouldn't push into the space of the gospel, which frustrated the heck out of him. Fast forward 3 months, and Gary shares at a cluster night like this, and he says, I had the joy of doing between 11 and 12 at night on a Wednesday night, because in Western Australia, it's 3 hours behind. So during winter, 11 till midnight. Yes, great cluster, that one. My very first. Anyway, so Gary says, oh, I've worked it out. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's about relationships. Yes, it is. Good, authentic relationships. Yes. He said, well, what happened was I was walking to work. He lives a kilometre from the church, and he walks to work and back every day. Anyway, one of the guys from the coffee shop purposely drove to my house to pick me up, to take me to work. And I was like, nah, don't worry about it. I don't know what his name was, Jack. Jack, no, don't worry about it. It's okay, it's okay. And Jack says, get in the car, Gary. And so Gary eventually gets in the car and drives the 800 meters to the church. And as he goes to get out, Jack says, can you just stay a moment? And this is probably relevant from Marshall's story as well. But Jack says to Gary, says, mate, I've got cancer. I've just been told I've got cancer. Can you pray with me? And so Gary, he actually recognized that Jack would have met Jack for starters. He wouldn't have met him, and he wouldn't have had the opportunity to share with him. Eventually, they went on to read the Bible together because of the way the relationship was formed. It was formed around just shooting the breeze. It wasn't formed around Gary telling Jack that he was going to hell. And so Gary had to risk truth, the truth that Jesus saves, to actually see this guy at least come into a relationship with him and also have an opportunity to hear about Jesus. That's not the norm. Most people in the church are probably going to be the other one. And I'll just change my color. And we'll have a look at this. Most people generally start up in this quadrant and have to take this journey. Obviously, this is our shadow, the valley of the shadow of death. You've heard your invitation challenge. You saw that at intensive 1. Very similar sort of thinking. This one is about risking relationship. That's probably the most relevant one for everyone at church. It's mine. That's what I fear. I fear risking, I fear someone saying no to me and I never want to see you ever again. My mate Pete, Pete's the guy that I went to work, we worked together for 30 years ago and still good mates and hang out when we can. My fear is he'll say no and I never want to talk to you again. Dumb idea. He's not going to do that. But that's my fear. And so what we tend to be, and so thinking of your congregation and the different folks, most people are going to be in this bucket, and we may even recognize it ourselves, but they're just going to be afraid. One lot are pretty abrasive and arrogant. Another lot, we're just afraid. Oh, we're humble. We don't want to impose on people. We don't want to see them. We're high humility and potentially true, but it leaves us in this afraid. We tend to be afraid of actually, asking someone who's a person of peace to walk with us. And so we fear risking relationship. And so when you're looking at your folk in the church, pretty much they'll come up in one of those two categories. We estimate, and it's only, and this is from people in the UK, the US, Australia, that's probably 95% of the church. And that's probably 5% of the church. So a lot of us need to be bolder And a few people need to be more humble about life. Just developing relationship. Perhaps those percentages are wrong because there is also these crowd down here. Where everything is just, they've atrophied. They're neither afraid nor abrasive. They're just quite happy to sit in church and do nothing. And that tends to be what happens is people who end up down here and people here end up here because neither works. They want to see people come. They're great people. They're great people. They love Jesus. They just don't know how. And their fears draw them down here, or their arrogance and abrasiveness means it's not working. So I just stop. And so perhaps the numbers is not 95 and 5, but maybe, most of our people sit here and we've got a few here and a few here. And so what we've got to do is push them back out, push them back to where they were so they can actually start that journey. Because that's where that's where they naturally sit. I'm just by nature afraid to actually broach stuff around Jesus. Gary was the opposite to me. I'm going to tell everyone about Jesus, whether you like it or not. So, looking at that graph there and whatever else, where would you put yourself? And it's okay. You may have already cracked that nut without knowing it, and you are a wonderful person who sits there and you've worked out the tension between being humble and being bold, and I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm not abrasive anymore, and they exist. I'm not saying they don't. So it's okay to say you're here, but by and large, most of us are going to sit even here.
Oh, I think I would tend towards humble but not bold enough.
Yep.
I think I'd be more afraid of risking relationship than truth most of the time.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm definitely there too.
Me too.
Amy, you're on mute. You have to say it again.
For me, if you put me in a group of Christians, it's like a confirmation bias. I can be very bold. But if you put me on my own, not only Christian, and I will be afraid.
Yep. No, that's a good self-assessment. What about you, Stephen?
I think personally, I'm also in the afraid category.
And so you guys are leading the charge. You're the early adopters of this whole thing of building a discipling culture, and you've self-identified that this is where we're starting. So when you look at your congregation, they are probably further up here or even down here. They're afraid, but it's atrophied. And so it's helping them. You've done the whole thing on the relationship square, moving forward from casual to meaningful and whatever else. For some people, that is their biggest. That's the first. What's the word I'm looking for? Chicken line. That's their first chicken line to cross. There's several chicken lines. One group told me, you only told us it was one chicken line. I'm like, no, it's a very big chicken line. There are several chicken lines for lots of people. But this is one of the first ones. Is even being able to have a conversation and looking to move it towards spiritual. I think I told you guys last time in December, I'm the king of casual. I'm the king of casual conversations. I have thousands of relationships, all an inch deep. And I'm learning to actually have some deeper relationships that really touch into the spiritual. My neighbor that across just literally 10 meters that way, and my neighbor across the road 30 meters that way. Julie, Clint, and just push into that space of having conversations with them, just pushing into that space of, you know, looking for spiritual stuff. So knowing where you're starting from, thinking of the church, when you're doing your clusters, this is the thing, you know, you're really pushing, looking into and pushing towards. Because once a person goes, oh yeah, you're right, or yeah, that's what I'm like, it allows that journey to start. If they're willing to step into accountability and as a group and go, yeah, I am afraid. I'm afraid. I remember that at that time, just I am afraid. And these are the 12 steps. No, I'm just kidding, not 12 steps. I am afraid, and I just need to be a little bit bolder. And you celebrate every little victory. Because it's not just one thing, you know, it's not just once. For some people, you celebrate when they have a conversation. As Amy said, a lot of us can actually have conversations with Christians, no dramas whatsoever, and I can be bold about that. For some of us, having a conversation with a non-Christian, you know, I had him in Thailand, but then when I came to Australia, you know, church pastor, I worked hard. I had to learn what it meant to be that and spend a lot of time. And I think I told you guys, I sat in my car when my daughter was at netball training. All these parents on the sideline just watching and chatting and talking. And I'm in my car reading a book, trying to de-stress. And it was that realization that I literally was there. Even though I was a pastor at church, I'd atrophied. And so I had to get myself back up to here and talking with Tim and a few others and, you know, and just start that journey of.
Darren, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So yes, just that journey, I think this was used, that the same kind of movement thing was used in the intensive on another grid. But that kind of shady spot where it's got to move through the valley of the shadow of death, whatever it's called. Can you just explain that and what that means? Because I remember it coming up in intensive. I was kind of like, I think it's a cool idea. I'm just not really sure what it means. Yeah, that the reason why it has to move through that. What does it look like when it moves through that other quadrant? So it's not a direct movement into the right quadrant. It's a movement downwards and then up, or yeah.
Yep. It's probably hard on the graph because I had one guy as an engineer and he's like, so you want me to become less humble? It's like, no, just more bolder. Keep your level of humility, but just become bolder. He's like, I don't understand. So the whole thing here is, if we want a head change, an intelligent change, if we just want our brains to kick in, that's the direction we'd go. And eventually that stops. You know, fake it till you make it actually doesn't work. I tried that. Fake it till you make it doesn't work. You actually have to have a heart change. And so that's the direction that a heart change goes, where your heart is changed over a period of time. This here, that what we call the valley of the shadow of death, is, you know, you've hit there is when it gets uncomfortable. When you feel uncomfortable doing what you're doing. Like if you're getting to a stage and you're going, I'm going to, I mean, let's just say you've moved the conversation forward with someone, like you shared with the tennis guy, and you're at that point and you want to ask him to read the Bible with you and you're squirming inside. You've actually come to that pivot point, probably at the bottom there, where God is actually grabbing you, your heart, and saying, I need you to, to take this step. This is a step of obedience, and you're fighting it. And it feels awkward and uncomfortable. You found your bottom in terms of the graph, in terms of how you feel about things. So that's that.
So it's just that you'll always go via a kind of point of tension and discomfort in order to finally get there. It's not a direct movement from one quadrant to the other. There's always a valley to come, but that actually tension point is where you cement the change, because it then becomes I get that. No, that's helpful. Yep.
Becomes part of who you are. And so a lot of the times we try and avoid those. We try and sort of either go down and go like that. We try and do that, or we just try and do this. And I heard Craig Rochelle, actually, of all things. I was doing a walk, and he sort of described, without knowing this, he described that we tend to do head changes in our Christian walk, not heart changes. He says a heart change is forever. A head change will dwindle. We'll step away. And it's like, that's it. We have to go through that valley. It's got to feel uncomfortable, but it's that step of obedience, and stepping out the other side is awesome.
I think we've all experienced that. That's helpful. Yeah.
What if you make the other person uncomfortable?
So I've actually had that where I made the other person uncomfortable. All you do is you just take a step back. So you don't try to ruin the relationship, but you're just going. You're not going to push in as hard. The hard part there is then we stop entirely. And so what ends up happening is we're coming down here and then we do that. Rather than going, I'm still going to come down, I'm going to be bold, but I might not be as supercharged bold. I might just drop it back a notch and just continue to have spiritual conversations. But eventually you'll get to that point where you say, you want to read the Bible with me? I'm looking for someone to read the Bible. I don't know if he'd be interested. And they're going to say yes or no, and it's okay. Surprisingly, all the people we've heard, and my experience is, and when people say no, it's not the end of the world. We think it will be, but it's not the end of the world.
I've heard it said it's a little bit like fishing. I know it's kind of depersonalizes it, but when you've got a fish on the hook, you do sometimes have to let go of the tension a bit.
Yeah.
If you just kind of keep yanking and pulling, the line's going to break. And so you good fishermen know how to let go, and then when to reel in, and then when to give it a break, and sometimes in our conversations over a long period of time, it's like, okay, I've asked them to read the Bible. They've seemed really uncomfortable and they've said no. That's all right. We just, move on, but we keep in contact. We keep talking spiritual things, and maybe there'll be another opportunity to ask them again another time, or come at a different direction. They say no to reading the Bible together with you, but then they might be willing to come to a Christmas service because it's less one-on-one, and then maybe that'll move on to something else. Or, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. But I think underlying it all is intentionality, just being intentional. And that's that. If you're looking for a person to sort of point out, I am the person who becomes complacent. So I have to continually go, when I leave the house, I'm being intentional.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, I was just going to say, just to remember, is like the very foundational stuff we did, like week 1, which is God is already working in people. Like, just never to forget that we're looking for people of peace, and God is already at work. And so even setbacks, not to forget that God is already at work and it's not up to us ultimately. We just have to kind of almost sink in with where God is working in this person's life. And it might take a longer time than we had anticipated, especially if we tend towards boldness. But yeah, that he's already at work and there'll be other opportunities. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've not heard anyone say, I don't want to. I want to see you ever again because you asked me that question. Not one. I've had no's, but it's okay. They still talk to me, or treat me, or whatever. We've got 5 minutes. What's one of your takeaways from tonight? What's a takeaway from tonight? I'll stop sharing the screen. What's your takeaway? What's something you'd like to share with someone else about tonight?
I think for me is the movement can go towards atrophy from either of the other two quadrants. I never really thought about that. I think it's a helpful way of, and then you got to pick them out from atrophy back to where they might have been before in order for them to then make their journey towards authentic relationship.
Yep.
I have actually a different struggle. So for me, maybe the issue is not so much about risking the relationship, but it's more about I'm too dumb. So what I mean is that a lot of times I do not know how to move from casual into like spiritual. so I just don't know how to change it. So what do you talk about? So maybe I think a lot of people maybe just have my problem too. So it's not like they don't want to talk about it, but they just don't know how to. So I always feel I'm just too dumb. I think a lot of people they are very natural. So they know how to initiate conversations, how to move the flow, but
yep.
I feel like too much struggle.
Yeah, I can relate to that, Stephen. I'm not very good at conversation. I'm not very good at small talk. So I feel like, I ask people some questions, and especially if they don't really want to talk, I just feel like they're not good at talking. I'm not good at talking. I actually don't know how to take the conversation forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, Amy. No, we have a friend, Sherry's husband, Matthew. He is so good at conversations. He can just keep chatting. Finding one topic, then another.
That's actually something we can actually look at again, or not so much again, but sort of push deeper into. We touched the surface back in 3rd of December or whatever it was, but we can push into that space.
Yeah, be cool.
Because I think conversations, we're either good at it or not. How do we help folk move forward with that, including ourselves? Karen, what's your takeaway?
I like illustrations, so I like the whole fishing line thing, and I think just the reminder that God, like it's God's timeline with people, and sometimes we'll have a timeline in our head, and when they don't seem interested or pull back a bit, I think it can be easy to give up or just to think, okay, they're not someone who's interested. But just remembering that just to keep praying for them and to still have relationship and to still, I guess, wait for God's time, which might come unexpectedly. Yeah, I think that was just a good overall reminder, because I've definitely seen it. People I thought I'd sort of given up on a bit, and then suddenly God just, it's the right time and they come asking. And so, yeah, God doesn't give up, and just his timeline, and yeah, not to be afraid or put off the relationship just because of one sort of refusal or
We'll have a look at Matthew 13 at some stage, which sort of speaks into that place as well. Won't look at the fields, we'll look at the farmer. And we'll talk a little bit about that. That speaks into that space that you were talking about there. Farmer goes out to sow. Amy, something?
Yeah, as I shared before, that I feel more confident if I have a group of Christians with me, and when we go out to evangelize, that we can be bold. So I think that's why Jesus sent his disciples out 2 by 2s, and and I personally found I'm more confident when I have another Christian with me, and like, you know, I think I work really well with a Christian partner, and I can be really brave and bold. But if I'm on my own, sometimes I just I think I'm a lack of the knowledge rather than confidence of sharing, or afraid of losing a friendship. Yeah, I think yeah, for me personally, I just need to equip myself more every day, so that, you know, as the Bible says, that to be ready to tell people what we believe in. So a lot of times when people ask challenging questions that I do not know how to answer, and I just kind of like, you know, I feel like I'm not. I know ultimately it's God providing the answer, and there's no right or wrong answer for a lot of things. But if I'm not knowledgeable enough and equipped well enough, I don't have confidence to share sometimes. Yeah. So I need to read Bible more and ask God to give me more revelation and understanding. Yeah.
Nice.
And
All right, Anthony and Steve.
Sorry, I just want to say Pastor Stephen is very humble. He's really, really great in sharing the gospel. Every time we have Bible study and there's newcomers and seekers, and he's so just knowledgeable. You know, God is giving him such a ability to explain a Bible in such a layman's term that people can understand it. And it just, any question you ask him, he's be able to just, you know, okay, this is this. So he's really good at it. And but he's so humble, Stephen. You are really,
maybe as you said, this is in a group setting.
yeah.
When I wrote down that he's too dumb, I put it in quotes. I'm like, no way.
Yeah, he's the only one among us with a PhD. Just putting it out
No,
there.
it's no use. No use.
No, I understood what he was saying though. Yeah. All right. So Anthony and Steve, hopefully you've had some conversations as well over the summer.
And they'll watch the recording. I'll send it to them.
I'll record that. Yeah, don't have to share them, but or if you do, next time we get together. But yeah, just when you're sharing with others, this will be some of the areas they struggle with. All right, gang.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, Darren.
Thanks for being
Thanks,
flexible
Darren.
with time and
Yeah,
Thursdays.
appreciate it.
No
Thanks,
drama.
Darren.
So just if you want to stop the recording, I want to ask